Welcome back to the Stephen A. Smith Show. Before I get on out of here, I had to talk about a story that's very, very important. And albeit indirectly, it involves Caitlin.
Basketball's once unstoppable star has suddenly gone quiet, yet the controversy swirling around her is louder than ever. This situation is no longer limited to a simple roster exclusion. It now feels far more serious and calculated. What we are witnessing looks like the deliberate tearing down of what could have been the greatest marketing goldmine sports has ever seen. Even more alarming, the most outspoken figure in sports media believes this damage may not be temporary at all, but lasting. Stephen A. Smith has now reinforced a storyline that many within the WNBA power structure are deeply afraid to say out loud, despite knowing the consequences are real. Caitlin Clark wasn't simply left sitting on the bench. In many ways, she has quietly stepped away from a system that never truly embraced her from the start. For months, audiences were asked to believe this decision was purely about on-court standards and technical evaluations. The narrative focused on team chemistry, hierarchy, experience, and the idea of earning your place over time. However, once you strip away the polished PR language and carefully crafted official statements, a far more uncomfortable truth begins to surface. What emerges is a story driven by resentment, strict gatekeeping, and a streak of small-minded jealousy that has transformed the Olympic stage into an internal war zone. Stephen A. Smith didn't merely question the call, he pulled back the curtain and revealed the decay sitting at the very heart of the decision. He strongly suggested that Clark is fully aware of what's really happening behind the scenes, that the pressure on her isn't due to a lack of talent, but because her influence is simply too massive to ignore. Now, the rumor machine has gone into overdrive, with whispers claiming that even if Team USA reversed course and pleaded for her return, that opportunity is no longer open. According to those reports, Clark has stopped chasing approval from a circle of peers who have spent the past 6 months trying to wear her down both mentally and physically. This raises a startling question: why would the most recognizable and popular athlete in America choose to step away from the world's biggest international stage? What did Stephen A. Smith notice that slipped past everyone else's attention? Could this be the exact point where the traditional powers of women's basketball inadvertently destroyed their brightest star? Get ready, because the unfolding story of Caitlin Clark's departure from the Olympics is set to reveal the hidden, harsher realities of professional sports that most insiders hope stay buried. To grasp why Stephen A. Smith is going all out with his criticism, we need to rewind to the moment the announcement broke. What was meant to be a routine roster reveal quickly turned into a headline-grabbing controversy. Typically, these lists are released without much fanfare. Normally, a few disgruntled fans might grumble about a roster snub, and within a day, the story disappears. This situation, however, was on an entirely different scale. It shook the basketball world like a cultural earthquake. Rumors began to leak that Caitlin Clark, the player who single-handedly packed arenas that had sat nearly empty for years, was omitted from the team. The public reaction went far beyond confusion, it ignited fury. The selection committee's official reasoning was weak, at best. They cited experience and the supposed 3-year commitment needed to be part of the core squad. On paper, it seemed reasonable, yet it completely ignored reality. You don't leave Michael Jordan at home just because he's new. You don't bench Tiger Woods because he hasn't paid his dues. The top talent belongs on the roster, period. But the story takes a darker turn. Insiders started revealing that this was far from a simple oversight. Insiders revealed a deeper message behind the roster choice. Sources familiar with the selection process hinted that there were real concerns about how the veteran players would respond to Clark's inclusion. The fear wasn't about her skills, it was about the disruption she might cause. Essentially, the thought of a rookie superstar stepping in threatened to bruise the egos of established legends who considered the team theirs. This decision had nothing to do with basketball talent, it was purely about managing emotions. The committee placed the comfort of seasoned players above the advancement of the sport itself. That is exactly where Stephen A. Smith drew a firm line. What he said next didn't merely question the committee, it outright suggested deliberate sabotage. Known for his fiery commentary, Smith's response to Clark's exclusion felt more pointed and personal than usual. Appearing on national television, he labeled the decision outright foolish, but it went far beyond simple insults. He dissected the business side of sports in a way that made the selection committee appear utterly out of touch. His reasoning was straightforward. The Olympics is the ultimate global stage, the rare moment every 4 years when casual viewers tune in to watch competitions they normally ignore. Women's basketball has struggled to capture attention for decades, yet suddenly there was a player drawing millions of eyes, someone who even had casual fans setting DVRs for random Tuesday night games in Indiana, and she was left off the roster. Smith argued that this wasn't just a mistake, it was a marketing catastrophe. He emphasized that Team USA isn't solely about winning gold, they dominate year after year regardless of the lineup. The real objective, according to Smith, should have been to grow the sport and expand its audience. By excluding Clark, the sport's gatekeepers demonstrated they valued maintaining their internal hierarchy over promoting the league's true potential. He implied that the level of incompetence guiding these decisions is almost incomprehensible unless intentional harm is considered. They didn't merely miss an opportunity, they actively rejected it. And, Smith warned, this kind of disrespect is something Clark will never forget. He suggested that any chance of reconciliation may already be gone, and that Clark's team is carefully tracking everyone who stayed quiet during this saga. To truly understand why Caitlin Clark won't be competing in Paris, we have to confront the J-word, jealousy. It's the storyline the WNBA would rather avoid, yet it's the only one that explains the full picture. Even before Clark had logged a single professional minute, warning signs were already apparent. Legends of the game, women whose names belong on basketball's Mount Rushmore, were making remarks that felt oddly antagonistic. Diana Taurasi, one of the all-time greats, famously warned, "Reality is coming for Clark," a statement that felt both cautionary and menacing. Then there was Cheryl Swoops, another icon, unfairly questioning Clark's college stats and claiming her dominance was only due to taking 40 shots per game. Why were these legends so threatened? Why attempt to undermine the achievements of a 22-year-old before she even fully arrived? The theory, which Stephen A. Smith has hinted at, is that the veterans are envious of the spotlight Clark commands. They endured empty arenas, commercial flights, and long careers with minimal pay and recognition, struggles that Clark has bypassed with immediate fame and impact. Enter a young woman from Iowa who already has private jets on standby, multi-million-dollar Nike contracts, and fans lining up around the block, and she hasn't even stepped on the court yet. It's natural for envy to arise, but in most professional sports, veterans usually welcome a rookie who brings in attention and revenue. When Tiger Woods revolutionized golf, fellow players didn't resent him, they celebrated him because he boosted their earnings dramatically. In the WNBA, however, the response has been starkly different. It seems some want to penalize her for her immense popularity. That same locker room toxicity may be one reason Clark could secretly feel relieved about missing the team. The bitterness didn't stop at interviews, it carried on to the court. And this is where the story moves from mere drama into a zone of real physical risk. For those following the games closely, the signs have been impossible to miss. Caitlin Clark has been targeted in ways that go beyond normal physical play. This isn't about tough defense, it's about off-ball, unsportsmanlike actions. Take the notorious Kennedy Carter incident, for example, where Clark was blindsided with a hip check while the ball wasn't even in play. Carter insulted her and sent her crashing to the floor. It was an unprovoked, cheap move, nothing more, nothing less. But notice the response. Did the league immediately suspend Carter? No. Did veteran players rally to Clark's side? Not at all. In fact, many athletes and media figures appeared to excuse the behavior, shrugging it off with phrases like, "Welcome to the league," or insisting that Clark simply needed to toughen up. Stephen A. Smith highlighted this as a glaring double standard. If a superstar like LeBron James or Steph Curry had been targeted by a lesser-known player, the league would have acted swiftly to protect their marquee talent. With Clark, however, it seemed as though the rules didn't apply, like open season had been declared. This situation ties directly to the Olympics. Why would Caitlin Clark willingly board a plane and spend weeks in a foreign country with teammates who either participated in her mistreatment or stood by silently while it happened? The Olympic roster includes the very players who made her last 3 months so difficult. Trust has evaporated, and team chemistry cannot be built with people who appear invested in seeing you fail. This leads us to the most explosive element of the story, the so-called soft quit. After the roster was revealed, rumors circulated that USA Basketball might offer Clark an alternate position, essentially a standby role in case of injury. It was a consolation gesture, a way to claim, "We still value you," without actually granting her a main spot. Yet, sources close to Clark suggest she had no interest in being anyone's backup. The whispers indicate she made it clear, politely but firmly, that if she wasn't considered worthy of the primary roster, she had no intention of waiting on the sidelines. This is the essence of the soft quit. She didn't hold a press conference or make any public statement, her actions spoke volumes. She didn't throw a fit or make a scene, she quietly pulled herself out of consideration. Stephen A. Smith's recent remarks lend weight to this interpretation. He suggested that Clark fully understands her influence. Right now, she essentially is the WNBA economy. She doesn't rely on Team USA to grow her brand, Team USA relies on her to elevate theirs. By stepping away and taking the month to rest, she is sending a clear message: you set the rules, now deal with the consequences. It's a strategic move, a display of authority, and it's infuriating the basketball establishment because they assumed she would plead for a spot. They expected her to accept leftovers with gratitude. Instead, she's taking a purposeful break while they compete in front of audiences that will likely be far smaller than they could have been. Let's examine the numbers, because they don't lie. The so-called Clark effect is real, measurable, and undeniable. Games featuring Caitlin Clark are generating viewership levels the WNBA hasn't seen in 2 decades. We're talking about a staggering 300% to 400% boost in ratings compared to matchups without her. When she steps on the court, arenas sell out instantly. Visiting teams often have to shift games to larger NBA venues just to fit the crowds. Clark is essentially a walking stimulus package for the league. Stephen A. Smith emphasized this point repeatedly: the Olympics is a television product, and NBC has paid millions for broadcast rights, they want strong ratings. By leaving Clark off the roster, the committee essentially burned money. Her revenge is subtle but potent. Clark doesn't need to act, she simply stays home. And when Olympic ratings come in noticeably lower than even a standard Indiana Fever game, the message will be undeniable. The consequences of this decision will be visible, well, not directly, because millions of potential viewers who would have tuned in will be watching something else entirely. This financial reality is what makes the choice so perplexing. It's not merely a basketball decision, it's a poor business decision. In professional sports, losing revenue is typically the one mistake that can cost people their jobs. Beyond the numbers, we also need to examine the culture that allowed this to happen. Fans are increasingly pointing out that the WNBA seems to have a mean girl problem. It operates like a tight-knit sorority where initiation is harsh and unwelcoming. For years, the league has been an insular community, everyone knows everyone, and outsiders face immense pressure to fit in. These players compete overseas together during the off-season and share similar struggles. Clark, however, represents something entirely new. She embodies mainstream attention and attracts casual fans. And it seems the insiders resent those casual supporters. You can see it clearly on social media, where WNBA purists lash out at fans who only follow Clark. Tweets like, "We've been here for years. Support the other players," too, make a valid point, but the tone is harsh. Instead of embracing fresh eyes, they're reprimanding them. Stephen A. Smith pointed out that this mindset is disastrous for any sports league. You should be rolling out the red carpet for new fans, not questioning their loyalty at the door. By sidelining Clark, the Olympic Committee only reinforced this us versus them mentality. The message was clear: they value their small, exclusive circle over a broad, inclusive surge of popularity. Clark, by all reports, has remained nothing but professional. She praises opponents, spends hours signing autographs, and consistently takes the high road. Yet the more she acts with professionalism, the stronger the mean girl energy from the league appears to become. It's a tense dynamic to witness, and it's causing neutral observers to question the behavior of the league's veterans. There's another dimension that Stephen A. Smith highlighted: the corporate side. Clark is a Nike athlete, and Team USA has major sponsorship ties with Nike. Typically, these brands wield considerable influence over roster decisions. They want their top stars visible, selling products on the global stage. So why didn't Nike intervene? Why didn't they push the committee to change course? Some reports suggest that even Nike couldn't penetrate the internal politics of the selection committee. Perhaps more intriguingly, there's speculation that Nike may be playing both sides. They also sponsor the veteran players. It's possible they didn't want to disrupt the balance of their established roster. The dominant theory, however, is that the committee stood firm to assert that corporations don't dictate team decisions, but in doing so, they ended up undermining their biggest corporate partner. Clark was preparing to launch her own signature shoe line, and the Olympics would have served as the ideal global stage. That opportunity is now lost. This breakdown in corporate alignment is yet another example of how deeply flawed and dysfunctional the entire selection process turned out to be. You've got the world's largest marketing powerhouse, Nike, paired with the nation's top athlete, Clark, and yet somehow, everything fell apart. It's a blunder of monumental scale. We need to approach this topic carefully, but the online conversation cannot be ignored. Race has become part of the discussion, adding further tension. Caitlin Clark is white, while the majority of WNBA players are black. Media coverage of Clark has been relentless, and some players feel that white athletes receive more visibility and leniency than black players of comparable talent. This is a historically valid conversation, but in Clark's case, it has been weaponized. Figures like Angel Ree, who has a long-standing rivalry with Clark dating back to college, have become the faces of anti-Clark sentiment. When Kennedy Carter fouled Clark, the discussion immediately fractured along racial lines on Twitter. Stephen A. Smith, who never shies away from addressing race in sports, has approached this situation with caution. He recognizes historical disparities but emphasizes that in this instance, the data speaks for itself. Clark's immense popularity isn't solely about race, it's also about her electrifying style of play. She can shoot from the logo like Steph Curry, and it captivates audiences. Still, the racial tension in locker room dynamics cannot be ignored. If Clark senses that she's being singled out or isolated due in part to these racial undercurrents, it only intensifies the toxicity of the environment. It becomes a no-win scenario: speak up, and she's labeled a villain; stay silent, and she suffers in isolation. If Clark remains silent, she continues to endure the pressure. Sitting out the Olympics removes her from this high-stress environment for a month, which could be exactly what she needs to protect her mental health. Another aspect that hasn't received enough attention is the coach, Cheryl Reeve. She serves as both the head coach of Team USA and the Minnesota Lynx. Even before the season kicked off, Reeve posted tweets that seemed to undermine the attention Clark was attracting, complaining about the broadcast schedule favoring the Indiana Fever. How can a player feel secure playing for a coach who publicly grumbled about her team getting too much TV exposure before the season even began? Stephen A. Smith highlighted this as a clear conflict of interest. The individual responsible for the roster had already demonstrated bias against Clark's growing hype. When Reeve was asked about the decision to exclude Clark, her response was curt, defensive, and dismissive, offering not an explanation, but a cold shoulder. This absence of leadership is a major issue. A great coach knows how to manage egos and blend the energy of young talent with the experience of veterans. Reeve, however, seems to have chosen the easiest path, keeping the veterans satisfied by sidelining the rookie. In doing so, she failed her first real test of guiding the new era of women's basketball. Now, let's revisit that alternate spot. In elite sports, being an alternate is a thankless position. You train, you travel, but you only play if someone gets injured. For a player of Clark's stature, literally the face of the sport, being asked to accept this role is widely seen as a disrespectful gesture. Imagine asking LeBron James to be an alternate in his rookie year; it simply wouldn't happen. The fact that Clark effectively declined the alternate position speaks volumes about her mindset. She knows her worth. By saying no, she reclaimed her dignity and refused to be a cheerleader for a team that didn't want her on the court. Stephen A. Smith applauds this move, calling it a masterclass in self-respect and power. Want more behind-the-scenes stories like this? Hit subscribe and stay updated on the real drama shaping women's basketball.